Okay, welcome to week 5, everybody. And in week 5, I think some of you are preparing to take the test. Some of you have already taken the test, which is a great thing. And so we're about halfway through the course now. Tonight, I'm going to keep it a little bit shorter because of the exam and because the subject at hand, developing a plan and a pitch, really should be helpful to you, I hope, in doing your final project for this course. And we've been building up to that final project all along. I've asked you various pieces. We've begun to teach you the various pieces of that. You've had a chance to tell me in that paper a week ago what you were going to do, and this week we ask you to tell the entire class that. And there seems to be a good discussion going on in the discussion board about the various projects. I have to say I enjoy reading them. I've seen a lot of great ideas in there, and I think a lot of enthusiasm. We have some projects that look more toward the family business end of it. We have some lifestyle businesses in there. We have some technology businesses. So we have a pretty good assortment and sample of the different kinds of entrepreneurship that one might encounter. So I hope some of you uh, really do these plans, because I think some of the potential ventures that I've seen that you've talked about, at least what I've seen so far, certainly look like potentially good ideas. If this is something that you want to do, I hope that you will have the courage and the time and the opportunity to pursue them as far as you want to pursue them. Okay. Um, just a few words about this week and so on. Again, this week, a couple of you wrote to me and asked why you could not see week 5. And when I looked, it was because you hadn't finished the test in week 4. And so I just want to remind everyone again that this course is set to be a mastery level. And you can take each test each week. It's just a quiz. It's only a few questions. But you can take it as often as you want, but you have to get 100%. And so the idea is to take the test, but the real idea is to do your readings, think about the issues, do your studying, take the test, hopefully get 100. But if you don't, if you're missing something, look to see which question you missed, go back to the reading materials in Beyond Entrepreneurship or in the text or in the online materials that I've provided, and find the answer to that and then bring it back again. And so far, I think it's worked reasonably well with 60 students in the class. I think almost everyone has gotten the flow of the thing and are going along really well with discussion boards, with the weekly tests and so on. But every once in a while, someone kind of misses out on the concept of taking the test before the following week opens. So just encouraging you, especially this week with the test going on, that you want to give yourself enough time to take the test. And I wish you all the best of luck on the test if you haven't taken it yet, which most of you have not yet taken it, which I think is a perfectly reasonable way to do it. By waiting to the end of the week, you have the benefit of the material discussion this week and the discussion board that's gone on, and more time to read and study and look at the review sheets and everything that I've provided online. I realize there's a lot of material online, and I hope that is helpful to you. Okay, so now let's really jump into this, which will help you a little bit get the idea of the term project, the business plan, or what I'm calling the hybrid business plan, which is a business plan that's been modified somewhat to take account of a lot of the things we've learned from effectual entrepreneurship and the Lean Launchpad. And let me go ahead to the next slide. We remember that a business plan is something that ventures have been expected to create since the dawn of new ventures. And although Steve Blank will like to say that that business plan competitions are over, in fact they're not. And so business plans are still out there. They're still used a lot. I think that many people have moved more in the direction of the business model canvas and the Lean Launchpad, so we teach both of them as we've talked about. Now, so the rejection of the business plan is not really complete. So while we study Steve Blank, we like Steve Blank, we like Steve Blank's work, we don't entirely buy off on his issue of the business plan being rejected by the community. It may get there one day, but we're just not there yet. So we're going to go ahead and based upon the evidence that we've put together, talk a little bit about a traditional business plan, and then see how we can change that business plan a little bit to take into account the things we've learned in effectual entrepreneurship and in the Lean Launchpad. And we'll begin with kind of the traditional business plan as it has existed for a long time. The idea of a business plan from the beginning was so that it really would force the entrepreneur to sit down and think through what it was they want to do and put it down on paper. Many people have a great idea, but they don't fully think it through. If you have to write it down to tell it to someone else, it forces you to think through each of the aspects of the plan. And the business plan has certain sections that we're going to see in a minute, which will help you, know all the things that you should think about. That's why the business plan was useful. You don't want it to be too long because, as Steve Blank has shown, no business plan survives first contact with a customer. What he means by that is you're going to learn from your customers and you're going to change the business plan. And your business plan might be a good one. You might learn from the customers that it's a good one, or you may modify it a little bit. The normal business plan is about 25 to 35 pages. You want to keep it short enough that it'll get actual investors to read it, and then it has to be long enough to have enough detail so that an investor could say, hey, I want to put my money in this business. There's also variations on that are even shorter. A summary business plan of about 15 pages. And the hybrid business plan is more akin to the summary business plan, the kind of business plan that's going to be due later in the course. The other thing that you need that goes right along with the business plan, and some people actually develop this first, some people develop the business plan first. It's kind of an iterative process, meaning that when you write the business plan, you'll probably change the PowerPoints if you've already put them together. But by doing the PowerPoints, you'll organize the business plan. Now, what it says on here is approximately 10 slides. Later, I'll show you an example of 12 slides. None of these numbers mean that that's what you have to have. I had that question asked in an email to me earlier this week. I guess it was today. In which one of the students said, oh, does it have to be 12 slides? I say right in everywhere, actually. I say on the syllabus, I say in the directions, and I say in the text that there are potentially 12 slides, but you never use them all. And here it says approximately 10. It's even going to be less than that. I've seen business plans that are one slide. Okay, the elevator pitch I'm talking about now, okay, which is about 60 seconds. You oftentimes create that 10 to 12 slides, though, so that you have them all to use if you need to. For example, if your elevator speech is 60 seconds, and in this class you're assigned to do one that's no more than 2 minutes to give you a little more time to do the presentation, but if you have an elevator speech that is 1 or 2 minutes long, you're hoping you'll get that investor so excited that the investor will say, "Oh, I want to hear more." And so you have more slides, right? And maybe in the elevator, when you're doing the elevator pitch, which you based upon the business plan, um, maybe you'll pick, just some slides about the product itself, the need for the product, the customers that you're going to address, and a little bit about how you plan to build the company. But then you might have another slide that goes into more detail on the marketing plan. You may have another slide that goes into more detail on finances. And so that's why there are 12 slides. But you don't use all 12 slides. In fact, in the difference maker competition at UMass Lowell, they recommend about 4 slides. There's all kinds of variation on what we call the pitch or the elevator pitch. Why do they call it an elevator pitch? Because it was originally designed to say, okay, you walk into a building, suddenly you see an investor standing next to you. You have an opportunity to go to that investor and say, and tell that investor a little bit about what you're doing. And hopefully that investor will be so excited that they'll say, "Oh yes," as they get off the elevator. I'd love to hear more about that. That's why it's called an elevator pitch. So it's in time it takes that elevator to go up. Okay. Oh wait a minute. Let me make sure. Oh, I did want to say something about the different audiences. I kind of indicated this already, that there are really 2 audiences for the elevator pitch. One is you and your co-founders to help guide you in execution, create a roadmap, and force you to think your plans through systematically. And the other is that outside audience, which could be an investor, a potential partner, or some other stakeholder. Even a customer may want to see your business plan, because before they buy from your company, they might want to know that you plan to be around for a while or where you're going especially a new company. And so many companies don't write a business plan. It's highly encouraged. We did write one at iLink. It helped us tremendously, but we did pivot and change it, just as the Lean Launchpad suggests that we might. Okay. So as I said earlier, there are some business plan variations, and you can have summary business plans. There's nothing really prescriptive about this. So when I use numbers here, it's not like using numbers in engineering with a precision to 4 or 5 decimal places. It's trying to give you a guide. It all comes down to you, the founder, and the person that you're talking to, and you have to use your judgment to know what is it that I need to communicate in the business plan or in the elevator pitch to the audience that I have to reach. That's a judgment call. That is not prescription. You don't have an algorithm to say it's got to be exactly 12 pages. It has to be 35 pages. But anyway, those are the variations you have: the summary business plan, the full business plan, and an operational business plan. The operational business plan is I'm introducing right here, which is a little bit new, because the operational business plan comes later. And we did do this at iLink. Once we began to launch the venture and began to have a certain amount of success, we realized that we needed to expand this business plan, make some changes from what we learned from the customers and so on, and really have a guide to an internal operation guide. We had to really think through a little more about how many employees would we have to hire. What space did we need? We started out in some shared incubator space. We moved then into a nearby building with a kind of a larger but still incubator space. And we had to plan quickly after that, because of our growth, to move into a much larger place like the Innovation Hub. And we did that. And so we developed the operational business plan to talk about that. We also had to talk about how much money we were going to raise, how much money we were going to spend. So we really had to expand the business plan into an operational business plan, which is a great thing. But I always come back to Steve Blank, right? Most companies' business plans change dramatically as things develop, and you can't get stuck in a rut. You can't think of your business plan as a inviolable plan which just has to be followed step by step. In fact, that's a sure way to fail if you try to force yourself down a plan that's not working or a path that's not working. Once you've discovered that you're on the wrong path, the thing is to find another path, and that's what it all comes down to. So what I've tried to teach students, people that work for me, that there's a lot of planning that goes on in life in a lot of areas, and I have what I call Wilson's mantra that I've worked with my employees and with people that I've helped do business plan, which is I don't agree with Steve Blank that you just kind of don't do the planning, right? I believe that you should develop the most detailed plans you can. Plan it, think it through, force yourself to think it through, try to think of every eventuality, have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and, plan some more. Get your plan as good as you can. And as soon as you are really happy with the plan, you and your co-founders, then sit down, celebrate, however you like to celebrate, whatever party that is, and rejoice a little bit and take a moment's pride that you have developed the perfect business plan. Once you've finished with that celebration, then come back again and say, okay, now let's think about this a little bit more, okay? How is this going to fail? Where is it possible to fail? How is it likely to fail? And you're not going to be able to necessarily know exactly how it's going to fail. If you did that, you wouldn't do it, right? But you've got to kind of give some thought to this. And the most important thing you're going to do is you're going to say, what am I going to do if this fails? And the step one is to say, remain calm. This is normal. Failure in your venture, in your business plan, is a perfectly normal thing. And you should just go ahead and just say, oh, okay, I learned something from the customer through this failure. Here's what I need to do to address this issue. And as I say to everybody, no whining. Or as that famous bumper sticker that we see on the back of cars says from time to time, I think it says something like stuff happens or something like that, something like stuff happens. And the fact is, stuff happens. So remain calm, don't whine, move on. You're going to be fine, and that is an okay thing. Okay. Let me go back to that just for a second here. I do tell a story, and I try to make sure that it's so that the person can't be identified. But one time, long ago, I was the CEO of an organization that ran large meetings, large technical meetings. And we did it all over the United States. It could be in San Francisco one time, New York the next time, Orlando the next time. These are really complicated. First of all, you're bringing together a bunch of scientists and engineers. And as the one of our students who proposed the geek bar knows, they have certain interesting characteristics. And you're now trying to organize a group of 1,000 of them, say, in a meeting. Good luck to you. And I had a person who was planning the meeting, working for me, absolutely wonderful person in every possible way, smart as a whip, very experienced, and she was putting together the plan for the meeting. And I had tried to explain Wilson's mantra to her about the fact that once you've done the plan, sit down and think about what's going to go wrong and what you're going to do. And but when she did her first meeting and did her first plan for the meeting, she, came in to me proudly showing how she put this together and all the things that were going to happen. And I asked her, point three, I asked her, I said, so tell me, Pamela, what will we do when this plan fails miserably? Oh, I, I realized I'd made a mistake. I should have figured out a more diplomatic way to say this to her or something. I don't know. But it's Wilson's mantra. Okay, this is what you do. You plan and then you sit down and think about the failure modes and how you're going to remain calm and how you're going to get through it. But she said, I didn't trust her. And I said, no, Pamela, I trust you. I hired you because you're very smart, you're very talented, but we're talking about 1,000 scientists and engineers. I am one of them, so I could say they're a strange bunch, right? They're going to do something that you didn't anticipate. Something is going to go wrong in this meeting. I don't know what it is. If I knew what it was, I'd tell you, we take care of it right now. What I can tell you, though, is we have to be prepared for that. She still just saw it as that I didn't trust her and so on. Now, obviously, I needed to show her trust. And so I said, okay, if you're confident, I feel good about that. That's good. I think the world of you, want to support you every way I can. Let's go for it. So off we went to the meeting. It happened to be in New York City in a downtown large hotel. And her plan was very, very good. But of course, partway through the meeting, some stuff happened. The plan went off track. Speaker didn't show up. It just kind of, and when the plan went wrong, poor Pamela was so upset that she actually walked out of the meeting and resigned, and which broke my heart because it was completely foreseeable. And so that's what I'm trying to tell you as a potential entrepreneur. It's going to happen to you. No whining. Don't panic. If somebody asks you, how's this thing going to fail, don't say you don't trust me. Say, I don't know, but here's what I'm going to do. Here's some of the things I've thought about. They're not trying to criticize you. They're trying to help you. And that is a key thing about business planning. And that's why Steve Blank rejected business plans, because he felt that they were too prescriptive. They got people in a box, and then the people figured they had to execute the business plan just as it was written, or it would show that they didn't know what they were doing. And of course, Steve Blank said, no. It means you've learned something and you pivot. A pivot is not a failure. A pivot is a smart move. Okay, so there we go. Let's take a look at the structure of the business plan for just a few moments. This would be a very traditional business plan. Now, there's variations in this when you look at it. No, people say, oh, it has to have exactly 15 sections. No, not at all. Probably these are things you should think about, all 15 of them. A cover page, obvious, title, company name, so on. Table of contents, it's obvious. The executive summary of 1 to 2 pages, critically important. I recommend that people write the executive summary before they write the business plan, and then I recommend that when they finish, they go back and rewrite the executive summary, so that the executive summary gives the information. I'll come back to it in a moment. A little bit of an industry analysis. What industry are you going in? What are you going to face out there? There's a variety of industry analysis tools we won't have time to teach here, but are oftentimes useful in this industry analysis. But the point is, you want to marshal as much information about the industry that you're going into. If you're going into the restaurant business, then talk about the industry. Talk about the average profitability that you can find this information online. Talk about the competition in your area, what the industry looks like, and so on. Okay, next, company description. What's your company going to do in this industry? What is its mission? What is the pain that you're addressing that somebody is willing to pay for? What's your tagline? What's your position in the industry that you're going to do? What are the kind of milestones of how you see just at the 35,000 foot level of this company description? Not too much detail at this point. Enough, my company is going to build a better mousetrap. Our mission is, no mouse in the house. Our tagline is a mouse-free house. Our position is an inexpensive tool to rid your house of rodents, and milestones. We're going to plan to have these things on the marketplace by such and such a date. All right, next. This is what part of what makes it a hybrid. The business model canvas. Business model canvas, we've talked a lot about. You know exactly what it is. You're going to be filling out those sections. As in the business model canvas, of course, there's a variety of things about market. You're going to expand a little bit that in section 7 on market analysis, market segmentation, and target market, competitor analysis, economics, marketing plan, marketing strategy. Then you need a section on product, service design, development plan, and how you're going to get to your prototype. You need a minimal operations plan at this stage. Later, you're going to expand that if you do an operational business plan, if you've had some success. You need a section talking about your management team, your co-founders, who you're hiring early on, what the structure looks like. Do you have a board of directors? Who are they? Do you have a board of advisors? Who are they? Do you have an organization chart? Are you going to organize yourself as a corporation, as a limited liability corporation? How are you going to put it together, the company structure? You're going to have a projected overall schedule. That is really tough, right? And because you're guessing, you're making a forecast about the future. And as Yogi Berra said, forecasts are really difficult, especially if they're about the future. So trying to predict the future is uncertain, and we know that. You're going to do it anyway, recognizing that it won't go the way you plan. And you need some financial projections. Now, in the business students in the course, they know how to do all the financial things, but they do it retrospectively. How much money did you make? How much revenue did you get? What were your expenses, so on and so forth? This is different. You're looking forward. You're doing what are called pro forma or projected financial statements of how much revenue you expect, and when you get to market, and how much the expenses and everything. Once again, we know that they're not right. They're your best estimates, and you have to say what your assumptions are when you do that. And of course, you need a summary and an appendix then. I talked a little bit about the executive summary. It is the most important portion of the business plan, and it's, as I said, you can write it first, but you should also write it last. And you will definitely make some changes in between. It may be the only thing that a potential investor reads, or a potential partner. If it's not good, if it doesn't grab them, they're not going to read the rest of it. Your job in the executive summary is to grab the audience or bring them to you and get them so excited that they have to read the rest of the story. It has to have a compelling story. It has to really talk about the plan. It's in many ways, it's going to be a written version that from which you will develop the elevator pitch that you're going to give when you get in front of an investor and they tell you, take 2 minutes and tell me what you're doing. If you've watched Shark Tank, you've seen this happen. Okay, you've seen a lot of elevator pitches, and a big part of the elevator pitch is deciding what are the most important points to tell the investor. You're not going to be able to tell them everything. You have to be prepared to tell them everything, but you're not going to do it in the elevator pitch. Those who try to do that fail because the investor's eyes gloss over and they're gone. You have to figure out what is the most important thing for the investor. There isn't any simple way to tell you how to do that because it depends upon your venture. It may be the product that is the most amazing thing. But, if your product is very mundane, if it's something that a lot of people do, for instance, there's a dog sitting service, something a lot of people do. So the product, you don't need to spend a lot of time on that. You have to spend time differentiating what makes you different. What is the key feature? Okay? And that you want to get that in there because otherwise people are going to say, oh, it's another restaurant. Oh, it's another dog walking plan. Oh, it's another, whatever. And you're not going to get the attention of the reader. But you have to be concise about it. They're not going to give you a lot of time. So this is now the hybrid business plan. That's the format that I'm asking you to, to do for the project. It goes through very much the same kinds of things. It develops a business model canvas, but we're going to hit the value proposition, which is on the business model canvas. You're going to expand it. You're going to talk about the key activities. You're going to talk about the team. That was in the regular business plan. What are the customer segments? What are the customer relationships? So in some sense, this expands on each part of the business plan. You're going to talk about the channels, how you're getting to the customer. Where are you getting your revenues from? Who are your key partners? What is your cost structure? What are your key resources? And the most important thing of a business plan is the only reason you're writing this business plan is because you're going to give it to an investor and ask for something or a partner. Maybe you're giving it to them and asking them for an investment. We certainly did that. We showed the business plan to several venture capitalists and asked them for, an investment of the order of $1 million or two or three, and they asked for us. But we showed the business plan to other people like Microsoft, for example, and Intel, and asked them, we wanted to partner with them. With Microsoft, we wanted a special access to many of the tools that they were developing because we were developing this for a Microsoft thing to become a Microsoft partner. And we got that from Microsoft. We were able to partner with them just that way. From Intel, we got both. We partnered with them and we got hardware that they would provide for us and some consulting. We also got an investment. So the ask is an absolutely important part of the business plan. And of course, the presentation to the investors. So now I'll take a few minutes on presentation by the investors. The first rule is do what they say. No matter what I tell you in here, what you read in your textbook, what you saw on the Shark Tank, it doesn't really matter. If I tell you, use 4 slides, and they say don't use any slides, follow their rules, okay? If they say to speak 20 minutes, do that. If they say speak 1 minute, do that. Most important thing, follow the instructions. Make sure that the slides are clear and uncluttered, not too much information. You're well rehearsed, you're smooth, you avoid jargon. You don't want to have to explain, jargon to them while you're going through that, so you want to avoid that. And you make sure that if you're going to require audiovisual, if you want a projector, for example, or if you need some special hardware or network connections, either bring your own or make sure that they have it or adapt to how you would live without whatever it is you need. So here are the infamous that people ask, what does an investor presentation look like? And I say, here are 12 suggested slides. But notice that on the bottom I say you don't use them all. So these are slides that I recommend that my mentorees make. But they don't use them all, right? They're going to use the title. They're probably going to use the problem and the solution maybe on one slide. Maybe they'll combine that onto one slide. Um, Maybe the marketing and sales, maybe they're going to be doing internet sales in a very special way and I want to talk about that. Certainly you're going to have to mention the management team, but you may not need a full slide on it. You may not need any financial projections at all at this stage. You may not have anything on current status, or you may. You have to decide what are the most important things, and the number of slides you use is probably going to be closer to 4 than it is to 12. Okay? So that is part of being a good entrepreneur, is knowing what to do. And avoid red flags. For instance, if you're in there and asking them for an investor and they don't think you have anything to lose, well, guess what? We've already saw that when we studied Mitt Romney investing in Staples with Tom Stemple. He said he wanted to make sure that Tom Stemple and Staples had skin in the game, and that if they failed and wasted all of Bain Capital that Mitt Romney was running, if they wasted all their money, they wanted Tom Stemple to feel the pain too. Skin in the game. If you put out a poorly documented plan and you say, oh, we're going to sell $1 billion of these. Really? I don't think so. So having third-party, well-established evidence, if you claim you're going to do something, is really, really important. No wild claims. A broadly defined market rather than a carefully targeted market is incredibly important. If you say, oh, I'm targeting the $550 billion a year pharmaceutical market, no, you're not. No, we have a company at the UMass Medical School that is spinning out, and it's targeting the $230 million ALS treatment market. ALS, the Lou Gehrig's disease. Okay, that's a targeted market. Wildly optimistic financials. We talked about Segway, and we read the case on Segway, and we know that they were wildly optimistic and thought they'd sell 40,000 a month, and instead they ended up selling 300 a month. Not a good idea. And of course, if it's sloppy, that says it all. You're in deep trouble. Investors will ask you sharp questions, and you should be prepared for those sharp questions and the blunt feedback, and you shouldn't take it personally if they're a little bit tough on you. If you've watched Shark Tank, you've seen Mr. Wonderful at work, and you know that he can be kind of nasty sometimes. Now, he's a particularly egregious case of nastiness sometimes. Sometimes he just likes to be nasty, and I didn't find most venture capitalists to be like that at all. But I did find them that they didn't suffer fools gladly. If you say something dumb, they're likely to say, that's really dumb. And or if you make a claim that can't be substantiated, they might ask you, well, how do you know that? And how can you prove that? And I don't believe it. And I love to tell the story. And fortunately, we were in good shape for getting investors, and we had a pretty good story to tell. So we were better treated than many. And I remember we were picking amongst which venture capital we're going to put in the first venture capital. And we picked Geo Capital Partners because I liked the guy, Steve Clearman, who was the CEO. And I told him, we're picking you because you can do a lot for us and you're a nice guy. When I said he was a nice guy, it made him mad. He says, Jack, I'm not a nice guy. I'm an investor. You get that through your head. And let me tell you, when we sold the company and I had to deal with Steve on the terms of the sale, he was not a nice guy. He was not a bad guy either, but he was not a nice guy. It was not easy. So expect them to ask you tough and probing questions. And by the way, if they do, it means they're interested. If they don't ask you much, sorry, you probably should consider a new investor. If you're viewed as a very attractive investment, they'll still ask you the questions, but they do it much more diplomatically. Okay, I guess that's why he called it. So, all right, I think covered most of this on the elevator pitch. These are, things to keep in mind. A little more information for you to read as you wish on the elevator pitch. Um, as I say, the non-negotiable part is the ask. It's got to be there. And okay, so the rest of this now is examples of elevator pitches and so on. I have lots of links here. I'm not going to go through them tonight. I just wanted to show you that they're out there. Some of the links are to the UMass Lowell Difference Makers Contest. At the beginning of the evening, I had the title slide showing a group of investors, a group of students that were pitching investors for a product which was a back brace. And it was hilarious because I think they had a sense of humor. It was in the pitch contest, but they were calling it a posture enhancer, and it really was just a stick with a couple belts on it. You strap around your body to straighten, to force you to stand up straight. And people would have been, angry and accept their pitch was brilliant. They were so good that some of the business people in the audience immediately wanted to get their names and hire them. Not because they were going to build this back brace or they were going to invest in their company, but because these students were so very, very good at the pitch. And you can look at it online here, and you might get a chuckle out of it. So, okay, that in fact is a quick overview of the business plan, the hybrid business plan, a little bit about the project that you're expected to submit by the end of the 9th week of this class. We're right now in the middle of the 5th week. And remember, we do have 1 week of vacation in there too during the spring break period. And so I hope this all helps you to do a better job with your projects. Feel free at any time to launch questions to me. I try to keep up with the email. This week, I spent 4 days at a conference that on healthcare systems in the United States, and it was made up of board members of big healthcare systems: the Yale New Haven system, the UMass Memorial Healthcare system, the Geisinger, just a bunch of big health systems, a couple thousand people in a conference room talking about the business models of healthcare. You would have enjoyed looking at a lot of the talks because they use a lot of the vocabulary of business models, disruptive innovation, creative destruction, and what is happening in healthcare, and trying to figure out how these established companies can innovate to avoid being disrupted by upstart companies that are coming along in healthcare. So all of this stuff on innovation and entrepreneurship is not just about starting up new companies. It's also about how you stay alive as an existing company by innovating to stay ahead of all those new companies coming along. You don't want to be Sears, which is going out of business because it can no longer compete with something like Amazon. Even Macy's is having tremendous difficulties because they're having difficulty competing with Amazon.com. They're being very disrupted. We've studied the case of how Netflix just blew up Blockbuster, which doesn't exist anymore. We had a whole chapter in which I had the picture of the dinosaurs of the disappearing companies. So that's what this is all about. You can do it in a big company, you can do it in a new venture, but understanding innovation is the key to success. Well, thank you very much for listening. some of you may be viewing this later in the week. Good luck on the test. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you next week. Thank you.